نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum. And today we'll be continuing with our Arabic grammar, our nahwa lessons. So previously we provided an introduction to the subject, discussing some of those articles and some of those things that are important for anyone to understand before they begin a subject, such as the definition of the subject. What does nahwa mean, both conceptually and both technically? What the purpose of nahwa is, and what are the benefits of it, etc. In this lesson, we will continue, inshallah. So the first thing which we will go over is kalima. So we did say that the purpose of nahwa were the words themselves. Kalima just means a word. However, when you speak in terms of nahwa, it refers to a word which has been developed, which has been created, which has been made for a single meaning. And there are three types of these kalima. They are ism, fi'al, and harf. So ism are nouns, fi'al are verbs, and harf or huruf are particles. And you can only have these three types of words, grammarians, or classical grammarians argued, was because you either have a harf, a particle, which doesn't have any meaning in itself, so it doesn't indicate any useful or beneficial meaning in itself or by itself. For example, fi, which means in, min, which means from, ila, which means to. So the first one, fi, it shows when something is within something. However, it can only make sense when a word is used with it to show what that something is. So you also have a verb. So a verb is a word which has meaning by itself and in itself, but it's bound by one of the three tenses. The three tenses being the present tense, the future tense, and the past tense. So fi'al. And then we have an ism, a noun, which refers to a meaning which is not bound or tied down to any one of these tenses. We may find that there are certain words. So we are saying that there are some nouns which do have tense related meanings. However, these meanings weren't originally attributed to the words themselves, but later, for some temporary use or so, the words, the nouns began to be associated with tense. For example, an ismul fi'al, a nounal verb. So it does have tense, which we will discuss later, but originally these words were not bound by tense. And this is what this is referring to. So the noun itself, as we've just said, it's a word, a kalima, which is free of tense and has meaning in itself. Example is rajul or bayt. The word rajul means man and the word bayt means house. So when you say the word rajul and you know that it means a man, then the image of a man may appear in your head, but no tense or no time frame would be associated with the word itself in your imagination. Similar, if I said house, then when you would think of maybe a building where someone lives, or something along those lines, and you just think of that structure, and there would be no time related to that structure. And there are various signs of how to identify what a noun is, and that we'll discuss this in detail in the next slide. A noun can be a word with which information is given, al-ikhbar bihi, or a word which is being informed about. So information is being attributed about it. Al-ikhbar anhu. So example is Zaydun qa'imun. Zayd is standing. Both words are nouns. Both words can be informed about, or they can be used to give information. Next up is idafa, which means possess, which literally means to attach, to possess. And here in this context, we're referring to possessive nouns. So when a word is possessed, like Zayd's book, the book of Zayd, then we know both those words are nouns. Kitabu Zaydin, Zayd's book. Zayd and book are both nouns. Another important sign of how to identify what a noun is if it is prefixed. So before the word, you'll find attached lam ta'rif, alif lam, the definite article. This makes a word specific. For example, we said before rajulun, which means a man, which can mean any man. But if we say ar-rajulu, then it refers to the man. It's a specified man. But for our lesson, lam ta'rif tells us that a word is an ism, a noun. Then we have something known as halatul jar. So halatul jar, the genitive case, it refers to words which have a relationship with one another through some kind of attribution or possession. For example, bizaydin. The word ba is a particle of jar, and when it precedes a noun, then it shows that that word is a noun with zayd, bizaydin. The next point is if a word appears and it has a tanween on it. If you can read a tanween on the word, then it is a noun. It's an ism. Rajulun, Zaydun, Kitabun. You can also identify a noun if it appears in the dual or the tathniya form. Rajulani or Rajulain. Qalamani, Baytani. Likewise, if a word can appear in the plural, the jama' form, like Ar-Rijalu or An-Nisa'u or Muslimuna. Another one of the telltale signs of an ism is if it is a na'at or a sifa, a quality adjective. So we have adjectives, a quality of a word, a single word which is an adjective for another word, that is also a noun. Rajulun alimun. Alim means knowing, a person who has knowledge, and this is a sifa, an attribute, and this will also be a noun. Another interesting sign is if a word appears in the diminutive form, tasghir. For example, you have rajulun, which means man, and rujail means small man. It's quite unique. It's quite a unique thing to Arabic. There may be other languages which have this form, but it's not in English. You don't take a word like house and say huwais to say small house. Also, when a word is called through a particle of nida, a particle which is used to call someone, like oh Adam, ya Adam, then the word that follows the nida, the particle of nida, like oh, ya, then it shows that word is a noun. A note on ikhbar anhu and ikhbar bihi. So grammarians describe ikhbar anhu as something which is mahkum alay, literally when a ruling is placed upon it. So information is given or attributed upon the word because it is an agent, a doer, a fa'il, or it is a na'ib fa'il. A na'ib fa'il or a maf'ul ma lam yusamma fa'iluhu. This means an agent an object whose fa'il is not known. Or in other words, a substitute doer. In some books you'll find that it uses the example, it says maf'ul, but here it refers to na'ib fa'il. Finally, if it's a mubtada, the subject of a sentence, this is also ikhbar anhu. information is given about the subject by its predicate. And they can be found in either a informative sentence or an insha'iyya sentence, which we will discuss in more detail later. So, for example, Zaydun qa'imun, as we've already said, Zayd here is the ikhbar anhu, the mahkum alayh, the ruling of standing is being applied on Zayd. So whatever it means to stand is being attributed to Zayd. Ikhbar bihi, on the other hand, is the mahkum bihi, the word through which information or rulings are applied. So in Zaydun qa'imun, qa'im is the ikhbar bihi, because that is through the word qa'im, the action of standing is being applied upon Zayd. We will next discuss verbs and their signs. So verbs, as we've said, fi'als, they have meanings in themselves and they are bound by one of the three tenses. So when you think of the word, you think of a meaning, but that meaning is specified in a tense. Unlike the nouns, the verb can only be ikhbar bihi, not anhu. So it can only be used to to give information about something. It is not the word being informed about. Similarly, the particles qad, seen, and sofa can be prefixed to them. For example, if you're familiar with the Quran, qad aflaha al-mu'minun. So the word aflaha is a verb because before it is the word qad. And also kalla saya'lamun. In the word saya'lamun, ya'lam is a verb because before it the particle seen comes before it. Similarly, ثم كلا سوف تعلمون. So تعلمون, this word is a verb because before it comes sofa. Similarly, if the state of jazim occurs on a word, that means it has a jazm or a sakin on it. The previous vowel stops on the final letter of the word to create a pausing effect. For example, lam yalid. Lam yalid. Yalid has a jazm state. It's not even if you continue reciting, you would not change this to yalida or yalidu or yalidi. There are some tajweed rules regarding that, of course, but the state of that word is in jazm, and this shows that the word itself is a verb. Similarly, if a word can change to and from the madi form, the past tense form, to the mudari form, which is an imperfect tense, because it can mean both present and future, or if it can be an imperative, an amr, or a negative imperative, a nahi, then it also implies that the word which is being observed is a verb. For example, if'al, do it, or do this, or do, or idrib, hit, or unsur, help. These are imperatives and they are verbs. Negative imperatives just mean when you translate that word, you add the word don't before it. So, la taktub, don't write. La tadrib, don't hit. Another interesting sign of the verbs is when a nominative pronoun can be attached to it. For example, a pronoun which will be the subject of the sentence is attached to the verb at its end. So you can call them from الضمائر البارزة المرفوعة. So conspicuous pronouns. Like in katabtu, the letter tu at the end of kataba is a pronoun which is in the nominative case, halatul marfu', which shows that the agent is added to the noun, is being attached to the noun. Similar to this one is when you have the ta of femininity, the unvoweled ta of femininity attached to the end of the word, like darabat. So ta ta'nith as-sakina, when you have this attached to a word, to a letter, so the big ta, you will know that this is a verb, darabat. And finally, when you have noon ta'keed, the noon which is used for emphasis, attached to a word, then you know that this is a verb. For example, la yansuranna or la yansuran. So this can either be in the athaqila, which is with a tashdid, la yansuranna, or it can be khafifa, which is with a sakin at the end, la yansuran. And finally, we have the harf, particles. And as we've indicated before, they refer to words which have no meanings in themselves, but they have meanings in words other than themselves. And a better example, a more clear example than last time, is min, which refers to a beginning point, and ila, which refers to an end point. But if you just say them by themselves, you don't know what. If I say min, the beginning point of what exactly? The beginning point of what? So we don't know what word or what meaning is trying to be conveyed by a speaker if they just say min, because we need more information before taking anything beneficial from them. So you can only understand their meaning when they are mentioned with a word that can be understood as a beginning or an endpoint. For example, sirtu min London ila Birmingham, that I traveled from London to Birmingham. So if I just said I traveled from to, it doesn't make any sense, right? And how do we know what words are particles? We know they are particles if they do not exhibit any of the signs of nouns or verbs. We know that they are particles if they are not ikhbar bihi or ikhbar anhu. So you can't make attributions with it or to it. So they aren't they aren't words regarding which rulings are applied upon or through which the rulings are applied. And that is all the signs of the harf. And there are a few benefits of the harf which, if you're familiar with other languages, like in English you have conjunctions, then in Arabic they perform similar things. So the harf can connect two nouns or a noun and a verb or two sentences, and more will be discussed later inshallah. And that is the end of this lesson. I hope you've enjoyed that session. If you have any questions, please post them. And it was a bit longer this session, but I felt like there was that most of this stuff you will pick up eventually when you read more Arabic texts, inshallah. But this is a beginning point which will help you. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.